Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wellness Dojo podcast, where we provide real solutions to real health and wellness problems. In today's episode, episode 6, Energy Sinkholes and Fighting Fatigue, we talk about how to recognize fatigue for what it really is, the impact of mental health, digestion, and sleep on your energy levels, and of course, what to do about it. We hope you take some value from this episode. Let's go. Wow. Well, we're back. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Wellness Dojo podcast, episode 6. We're at a half dozen.
Half a dozen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's been fun so far, and I'm so looking forward to keeping these going.
Yes. Me too. I mean, half a dozen, like that should have been a landmark on my list somewhere. I should give myself a little something just for that.
Yeah. Well, we'll make the dozen a landmark,
Okay.
maybe episode
That's
10.
fair.
Episode 10, we'll celebrate. Maybe we'll have some beers on the podcast or something.
Ooh. Okay. Get some craft going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, yeah.
Episode 10. Beware and be ready.
Yeah. I'll do like a quarter beer maybe. I don't know how good me and alcohol in the podcast
Oh,
will be.
I have a feeling it'll be good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good as in actual good content, or good as in
Entertaining. Yes.
yeah, they're all one and the same anyways, aren't they?
I mean, there's really only one way to know. So
There is.
I mean, let's go for it.
And we talk all the time about just taking that leap.
That's right.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Take that leap into.
Maybe I'll get some 0% and that'll be the compromise, but
We'll see.
Okay.
Maybe instead of beer, we'll go whiskey.
oh, we're just going to kick it up. That
Yeah.
is you, isn't it? It's like if we can't go 0 to 10, let's go 0 to 60.
Maybe that'll be an episode where we actually talk about alcohol
Yeah.
while we drink it.
That would not be fair.
That wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
We're gonna start with a game.
Okay.
Again, we're gonna
I
go
love
back
it.
to our overrated, underrated game. I'm excited about this one. Yeah. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, we got a few topics here. I haven't put much thought into this, which makes it fun.
Exactly.
we just kind of write down some topics and see where we go. Okay, so today's overrated, underrated. We're gonna start. I'm gonna ask you first.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me what you think about video games.
Video games. So this is a tough one. So for me personally, when I look at video games for myself, I say it's a hard overrated for me. And not again, this is me personally. I don't play a ton of video games. I've used them for entertainment purposes, but I don't give myself a lot of entertainment time. Like I'm always, if I do have downtime, I'm working on, content and all of those types of things. And so for me, video games have been overrated. However, with that being said, not to contradict myself, but I do think they're very underrated in the current time that we're living in because of the growth of video games and the opportunities in video games for streamers and that type of thing with, money making opportunities. Video games is where it's at right now. So for me personally, in my situation, I would say overrated.
Okay.
How about you?
I'll take the opposite stance just to keep things interesting. I'll say underrated. I had a brief stint working in a clinic that concentrated on concussions, and I started seeing some of the application with what you would call video games for brain recovery. So some of these would be like the dot on the screen would change locations, and you would have to use the cursor or your mouse to go to that new location, click, and it would kind of measure your the speed that you did it at and your reaction time and all that. So I think there's just a lot of maybe untapped potential for recovery, and of course that's what I'm interested in as a naturopathic doctor in health. Okay, so that would be one opinion on video games there. The other one is that there can be some good applications as well, just in leisure. I'm playing one right now on PlayStation 4, and it's all about stealth and tactics. And I had someone watch me, and they said, "Oh, it's literally kind of like chess is what you're doing." And so I find it, that it's something that I can utilize to really stimulate my brain instead of actually turn it off. In this particular game, I don't like to get to after a long day, It's so cognitively intense.
Oh, because you have to think so much while you're playing it.
Yeah, it's not like that enjoyable.
Gotcha.
I would mention it, but people think we're sponsored by them or something. But if you really want to know what the game is I'm playing, let us know. So yeah, I'll go with underrated on that.
Okay, awesome. I hope I didn't lose us like 4 followers by saying it's overrated. I do like video games, but okay, next one. Beyond Meat burgers, overrated or underrated?
Ooh, it's tough to choose over under because I'm tempted to say under, but now there's just so much commercialization and so much push in on certain fast food manufacturers and things like that to get it out there. I can't help but think it's going to be overrated very soon. But I'm gonna say for me personally, because that's what I think this game's about, I'll say under. Because they tend to be made with mushrooms, which have a great mineral content specifically. They also contain things, beta-glucans for your immune system. So probably underrated just because of the nutritional profile and all the hate it still gets. The only thing I'll say on that is that they can also be soy-based. And it is true. If you are trying to maximize testosterone, you should not be eating a high soy diet. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm going firm overrated on Beyond Meat burgers.
I like it.
I think they're over commercialized right now. Like you said, they're being pushed way too hard. And I think also when you look at for somebody who, is not. So let me just say this, like in terms of being like vegan or vegetarian, there's reasons why people do it. And people have beliefs, or maybe they actually have like digestive circumstances that are leading them to that decision.
Yep.
That's fine. I think what's happening right now with Beyond Meat burgers is they're trying to make it as if this is like the best choice for everybody, when it might not be. Like when you look at some of the ingredients list on some of these products, like it's insane. Like there's less ingredients that you can't pronounce in like cereal boxes sometimes. Yeah. And so for me, I'm saying overrated. That's coming from somebody who does eat meat, who does enjoy, a good burger. That being said, too, like there's other options. Like I had a black bean burger that I had like last weekend, I think. That thing was amazing. Like it was so delicious. So like there's other options. I just think the whole like Beyond Meat thing right now is just being like so over pushed and overhyped to the general public. Whereas it's a select group of people, I think, that are that should be benefiting from that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Do I get to pick? Do you want to do one more?
Yeah. Let's do one more.
Okay.
We got 2 more. Let's do 2 more.
Okay. 2 more.
Let's get into it.
All right. Rapid fire. All right.
Yeah.
Next one. Overrated, underrated carbs.
Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates underrated.
Okay.
Definitely underrated. Carbohydrates are, I think, important. It comes down to quality of carbohydrates, though, right? It's like not just like white bread and sugary cereals and those types of things. You have to be smart when you're looking at your carbohydrates. However, I do think carbohydrates are underrated, especially in terms of fitness and performance. How about you?
Yeah, I don't think I want to deviate too much as well because there's just so many healthy foods that come with carbs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of carby vegetables and like root vegetables that are some of the healthiest, gram for gram things in the world. So, yeah. So, and also for exercise and performance, there's not a lot of solid evidence out there for sports nutrition. You're looking at things like branched chain amino acids and all, like the things that work are. It's so basic. It's like carbohydrates before activity, a little bit of caffeine, and then creatine and protein powder for recovery and things. And not I don't want to misspeak about creatine. Creatine's more for energy reserves and performance, but generally speaking, that's like all the supplements that reliably and consistently show up as having any benefit. It's so simple. It's like carbs, caffeine. There's a study out there about nicotine too. I wouldn't recommend that, but the way they were administering nicotine to these athletes, I think they were track athletes, like endurance or something. They were having performance increases. Don't do it through tobacco. But that one was interesting too. Okay. All right.
Okay, so last one. Let's go with having a pet. Overrated or underrated?
Oh, well, I'm such an animal lover, and I know that most people listening to this are. I'm going to actually say overrated due to the amount of people that take on pets as an idea that it's just something kind of, that they want to do that they're just maybe not ready for. So just, be cautious of that, I guess.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm surprised by your answer. I thought it was going to be a firm underrated, but I love what you said about that, because I do think, especially in this kind of pandemic world, that's a big issue that's going to be popping up as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to say underrated, specifically aimed towards just the thought of being a parent and having kids and pets for kids. I think it's super underrated.
Yeah.
Nice. I had a cat growing up as a pet. It was like, my best friend growing up as a little boy and stuff. And I'm a dog lover as well. And I just know there's been studies done and stuff that do show like development for kids and responsibility and that type of thing through having a pet can be really, really beneficial. So I'm going to say underrated.
Nice. And I know we tried to do an artificial version in the 90s. What were those things? Takagomi or
Tamagotchis.
Yeah,
my kids have those.
Oh, they're still around?
Yeah, they're still around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, there's no substitute for the real thing, but
that's right.
We will try. Okay, let's get into our topic of the day.
That's a big one.
It is. We're talking about energy sinkholes and fighting fatigue.
Yeah.
So really, when we're talking about fatigue, my goodness, it is a big topic. When I look at fatigue with a patient that comes to me and just says, I'm tired, I don't know why I'm tired, there's an intake process that I go through with them. And the first question is pretty much, well, why are you tired? Why do you think you're tired? And sometimes just being asked that point blank and forcing the person to really think about it, you get some very accurate answers. Sometimes they know, but sometimes they've never really been asked that before. They just know they're tired.
So what are some of the most common answers that you do get?
Being a parent with a full-time job is probably the most common answer. Generally, that's kind of the start of the fatigue picture. That's the most common I get. But I also get young students as well that are they're away from home, they're stressed out, money's tight. And although there's always kind of the veneer of I'm in college, I'm happy, there's the party life and all these new experiences. There's a very real stress that comes along with it as well. That's a little bit less glamorous to share that stuff on social media. So I get a lot of 20-year-olds, 20-somethings that are very tired. So, yeah.
Okay, and so some people are very aware and open in that question. I'm sure there's people who are kind of like, I just don't know. Like,
yeah, if they don't know, then it's important to go back and say, okay, well, tell me about when you felt okay. When was that? We start there. When was that? I don't know. I was feeling okay. Let's say 5 years ago. Okay, and what did that look like? What was so different from yesterday and today? Can you describe to me that person 5 years ago? What would their day look like? And then we start tracing what happened from there to now. And it could be something significant. It could be, like we talked about, I think it was in the stress episode, some of the biggest factors that contribute to chronic stress. And it's like, death of loved ones, change in job status, particularly losing your job. There was like big life moves, like moving geographical locations and things like that. So it never ceases to amaze me how that is discounted. Even when I ask people what happened 5 years ago, there's a few things. I lost my dad, and then this, and I was like, do you think that contributed? And they say, well, no, I'm over that. I got through it.
Yeah, that's old news.
Yeah, I get that quite a bit. And I do have to respect that, and I always try to take the patient at face value first. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, are they missing something? Yeah, so you have to ask, when did it start? And then it's really important to realize if it's getting worse, the evolution of it. Is it getting worse from that point, that 5-year period to now? Or has it remained relatively stable as well? Or has it even gotten a little bit better over the last couple of years? So that would be the next question, is kind of the evolution of it. And then from there, we're trying to decide, is this something called primary fatigue, which just means I'm fatigued, we don't know why, or is it secondary fatigue, which means it's fatigue secondary to something else? So if somebody's undergoing chemotherapy, they are going to be experiencing nausea and fatigue and all sorts of things secondary to the therapy. So is it primary or secondary fatigue? And we just kind of go from there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, well, let's see here. We could talk maybe a little bit about some of the reasons why you would see primary or secondary fatigue.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Also, if you want to jump in and tell me about experiences that you've had with your clients, because I'm sure you work with a lot of fatigue too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have some thoughts specifically related to like fitness and nutrition in terms of fatigue, but I'm curious to continue hearing kind of from you your experience with clients, and particularly, I mean, starting with primary fatigue. Like, what are some examples of what people would see? Because I'm sure there's people listening. They're like, okay, primary or secondary, cool. How can they relate to that? What are some examples of that?
Yeah. Apart from what I said before, like you don't have to be a parent, you don't have to be a student. I work with a lot of people just naturally aging with changes in hormonal levels, in metabolism, and at that point they're just tired, and lab values are coming back fairly normal, let's say. And that's the thing with primary fatigue, is that lab values really only inform a change in treatment plan for fatigue. It's something to the tune of like 1 out of 10 lab tests specifically for fatigue. So that would be an example of primary, and it's like they might be, let's say they're in their 60s, they're still working really hard, they're under a lot of stress, they eat fairly well, they're active, they don't necessarily have lab values coming back and glaring and saying this is the problem. So from there, that would be that kind of case. Let's just say a 62-year-old person who's been working for 40 years kind of thing, and they're just tired.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like, and this is one of the things that I'm fascinated by with your profession, with your line of work, is that, for me, when I'm working with my clients and stuff, it's a lot of asking, and it's a lot of figuring out. When I'm working with somebody, I'm like what you were talking about before. It's like, well, when did it first start? How long is it getting better? Is it getting worse? It's a lot of the questions. Whereas with your line of work, you have the ability to then go in and say like, okay, well, let's actually see what's going on from a biological standpoint.
Right. And then if I figure it out, which has happened, I can give some examples today. Then it can convert from primary kind of, oh, you're just tired, we don't know why, to secondary, here's why you're tired. You're tired secondary due to this lab value that I can see right here.
Yeah.
And I'll give some examples of what I might see in lab values when I'm testing for fatigue. So there's vitamin and there nutritional deficiencies, of course. So having low iron, either in your diet or certain proteins that transfer iron in your system, if those are low, then iron is really responsible for circulating oxygen around your body, and that I believe that includes up to the brain too, right? So if you are low in iron, you're low in oxygen. If you're low in oxygen, you're just low in cellular respiration, also and ATP and all sorts of things. So iron, vitamin B12. So if you are a vegetarian, this is where you, or you're just not consuming any meat, this is where you do have to supplement.
Yeah, so that's a big one that comes up. Both of those two are big ones that come up a lot when I'm talking to people as well. They'll say like, I'm taking an iron supplement, or somebody who is vegetarian or vegan, and they're not eating meat. It's like when those two things are lacking, that can be a big link to like when I'm asking people questions as well. If they're like, I'm just so tired. I'm like, well, what's your diet like? Well, I don't eat meat or this or that. It's like, well, okay, we need to get you in with Dr. Riley so we can start to see like maybe there's a vitamin B12 deficiency here, or maybe there's an iron deficiency, because that's, like you said, in those types of diets, and those are two of the big ones that will be missing.
Yep. So we've also got vitamin D. That can really impact energy levels, also just mood and sleep-wake cycles and things like that, which obviously impacts fatigue. Then I would say beyond that, just the standard American diet.
Yeah.
I love that acronym. It's just sad.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I think in a nutshell, I think that's a good enough start. So if I was testing, like we can test vitamin D, we can look at specifically at B12, we want to look at iron, red blood cell count, things like that. And then beyond that, I would want to look at blood sugar levels, because if they're out of range, that's going to affect your energy levels. And then beyond that, I'm going to start looking at other organs, perhaps, particularly the thyroid. So the thyroid is located, let's just for simplicity's sake, say around the voice box. And anytime I say thyroid today, I want you to think about the term metabolism, because that's essentially what the thyroid gland does. Is it supplies pretty much every cell in the body with these hormones needed for metabolism. And so if your thyroid is overactive, you are going to have way too much metabolism. That's going to cause like high heart rate. It's going to cause anxiety, restlessness, things like that, which, like, if you're buzzing at that level for too long, you're going to think that you don't have energy, and you're going to be, it's that tired and wired. And then on the other end of the thyroid, if your thyroid is underactive, now imagine everything slows down. So your digestion slows down. You're going to see weight gain. You're going to have an intolerance to cold, because you're going to be cold already because your metabolism is slow. And you better believe that that's going to affect your fatigue. And so I have, within the last, couple of years, I've found both hyper and hypothyroidism in patients that didn't know they had it, and it came out during lab tests.
Interesting. And, for those of you who are listening and watching, when we're talking about metabolism too, like to break it down to the most like basic level, like metabolism is the activity of your cells, really. Like anytime your cells are doing anything within your body, which they're always doing something, that's essentially what your metabolism is.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at like, okay, well, how do we have a healthy metabolism? Because it sounds like what you're saying is like your metabolism has a big effect on whether or not you are fatigued and what you can do about that fatigue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when we're looking at, okay, how do I get my metabolism healthy again? A big part of that is putting your cells to work, right? And putting your cells to work in the right way. Like I talk a lot with nutrition on like processed foods versus whole foods and the importance of whole foods for your metabolism, because that gives your cells a purpose. When you're having good whole product foods that are full of nutrients, your body can then go to work and start picking and pulling nutrients apart, saying, okay, I know this nutrient needs to go here. I know this needs to go here. This is going to help build this hormone. Mm-hmm. This is going to build this chemical. And your brain gets to go to work and your body gets to go to work and do its actual purpose.
Yep.
Right. And that then gets your metabolism, it doesn't put it into overdrive, but it gives it a purpose and lets it be healthy and do what it's supposed to do. Right.
Exactly.
That can be a big impact on that fatigue.
And I would say a common relatable example to what you just described about the body breaking down nutrients, sending it places where it needs to be. B vitamins are really important for breaking down carbs and fats, and our macronutrients into energy. So if anyone's if anyone's ever taken a B complex, or you have B vitamins in your multivitamin, or heck, if you eat meat, because that's going to be where a lot of your B vitamins are. The purpose of B vitamins is to promote metabolism in a way of breaking down macros for energy. So yes, that would be just a common example.
So like, when I'm working with people and I'm looking at, okay, let's look at, they're constantly tired. They don't have energy for their workouts. They don't have energy for anything. A big thing that I'm looking for, a couple of big signs is like, a couple of things I just said, like they don't have energy for their workouts. They're waking up feeling exhausted.
Yeah.
Like those types of things. What are some of the other things that you see with people, for the people that are watching and listening, to say like, well, am I fatigued? Like, how do you know? What are the things you look for?
They're fatigued immediately after like bringing themselves up to, let's say, I'm going to bring myself up to do this task, or I'm going to use all the willpower I have in reserve to do a workout, and then they're just completely floored and low energy. Tank is empty after. Yeah. They're not feeling refreshed at all. And so that's another thing to look for is just waking up completely unrefreshed, which, like, that's something that naturopaths ask all the time. It drives me crazy, because like I'm a pretty, I've pretty good energy, and I don't wake up refreshed, and I get 8 hours of sleep. Like, it's still hard to get up in the morning, but it's like, is it that difficulty of just kind of going over the threshold from sleepiness into wakefulness, and we all just kind of agree with the cosmic contract and kind of get through the little struggle, or it's like there's something deep within you saying, I can't get out of bed. It's different.
Yeah, like what I typically will ask people is, how long does it take you to get to that point? Like, what is that length of period? Like, what's that period of time that where you go from like, I don't want to wake up and get moving to I'm up and moving?
Like, I don't want to wake out of bed.
I'm
a professional singer, everyone. Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. So and then post exertional fatigue.
Yeah, that's a big one, because a lot of people that I talk, like a lot of the clients that I work with, maybe they're really tired, they're run down when they come in for their workout, but then afterwards, that's a big thing. It's, oh, okay, like I feel so much better now. Like if you're not feeling better afterwards, if you're still run down, or if you're more run down, or that workout was absolutely miserable, not just because I made you do burpees, but just because it was just miserable, that's a good sign of like, okay, maybe something is actually going on that's deeper than just, I'm tired today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the other thing is medications. Like, we're in that's an opinion. We're in an overly medicated society. I think even my MD colleagues would agree with that.
Medication, too. Overrated or underrated? We're not going to go there.
That's too spicy. I think I wrote down a few categories here. There's like, and this is categories. Like, we're talking, there's dozens, sometimes even hundreds of drugs per category. So certain blood pressure medications, certain medications that you might be given, ironically, for sleep, because they can cause, what's it called? It's like refractory or rebound something, but it can actually do the opposite. Like, it can make you drowsy in the morning, and then if you go off of them, it can cause rebound insomnia. So that one's obvious, but sometimes just the fact that you're still quite drowsy from taking something like a benzo the night before can add to feelings of fatigue. Antihistamines, that's why now we see a lot of like non-drowsy being stipulated. And then, of course, pain medications, right? You're not going to take a Percocet and want to go do a lot. I know that, having gone through, fairly recent ACL reconstruction, and was given Percocets, and I was just amazed by the effect it had on not only like energy, that's obvious, but on my digestive system. Just slowed everything down and backed things up, and so to me, that's gonna affect your metabolism in a negative way. It's going to affect your fatigue. So I mean, those are just categories, right? I'm sure there's more. That's just kind of the first four categories that jumped to my mind when I was making notes. So.
Yeah, and then you're looking at also like self-medication of like alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, those types of things.
Yes.
I mean, we'd be really remiss to be on this topic of fatigue and not also talk about sleep and how, sleep is affected and how sleep affects that fatigue too, right?
Yeah.
And not to mention like the hormones that you've been talking about, the chemicals, the thyroid being active, not inactive, like those types of things are all affected by sleep as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about sleep, baby. Let's talk about you. I'm in a song mode today.
You're in a singing mode. We might get another song out of Dr. Riley today.
Yeah, sleep. That's a big one that naturopathic doctors really get into as well. This concept of sleep hygiene. If anyone hasn't heard that term before, when we use the term hygiene in relation to sleep, it's really just about like good habits around your bedtime routine, and then even your wake routine.
Yeah. And would you say sleep is like fairly misunderstood by most people?
Sleep overrated, underrated.
Underrated for sure.
Yeah, no, there's like the sleep deprivation Olympics that happens sometimes, where people are bragging about that they're only on 3 hours of sleep, and I'm on 4 coffees, and I might have been that person a few years back, but I no longer am. I value sleep like it's gold. But yeah, I think that when advice gets given out there about, science has figured out we need to sleep 7-8 hours, everyone just gives the thumbs up and goes, cool. I already knew that. I don't care. That doesn't mean much to me. I think I get about 7-8 hours of sleep. I'm in bed around from this time to that time. but it's really it's about sleep efficiency. How long are you asleep? Divided by the total amount of hours you're actually in bed. So people can be in bed for 10 hours from whatever that is, 10 p.m. till 8 a.m. or whatever, but not be getting a good quality sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read the book, Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. Have you read that book before?
No.
No, it was a fascinating book, but there's a quote that really always like stuck with me from that book. And it is that sleep is not the absence of wakefulness, right? Whereas I think a lot of people think like, oh, I go to sleep, it's just me not being awake, like I'm just resting. Well, no, when you're sleeping, and particularly in REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, right? That dream sleep, like your brain is like, that's when your body goes to rest, but your brain goes to work. Like that's when your brain is the most active, right? And there's, it's a very powerful time period for you and for your brain's function, whether it's dealing with stressful situations, anxiety, bodily functions that are vital, like all those things. Like that's when your brain goes to work and goes like, okay, let's figure shit out.
It does that. I think that's part of even what dreams are is problem solving, and that's not my opinion. There's something so fascinating. There's a study done with birds. Have I told you about this yet? The study with birds where they were hooking them up for when they were awake and when they were asleep, and they found what was happening with juvenile birds is that when they were asleep, they were exhibiting a pattern of the song that they were trying to learn from their parents. The same brain waves that they could see in the day when they were singing were showing up at night. And what was happening is in the day, the researchers were saying, okay, the bird was kind of missing this note. It's having a problem at this part in the song. And in the dream, the brain was working it out, and it was kind of like smoothing over those bumps and then improving the learning of the song during sleep.
Yeah.
It was like that was just one of those things that blew my mind.
Yeah. I want to elaborate on that a little bit, but also another interesting fact about birds and sleep is like many mammals and reptiles but birds can actually like put half their brain to sleep and half their brain stays awake.
Yeah.
Like this has been scientifically proven as well. And so when you see all those birds like sitting along the telephone wire, right? You know, so you always see them in a line. Mm-hmm. Well, what's happening is all the birds in the middle are getting full sleep. Whereas the bird on the left has the one side of their brain turned off. The bird on the right has one side of their brain turned off. And what they're doing is they're keeping that one side so that they can watch for predators, and then they'll wake the others up. Right? It's a fascinating thing, and they're not the only animal that does it. Like whales can do it as well, where they can be like sleeping but still like eating as they're sleeping and stuff. Like
I can do that too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things I can do while I'm sleeping as well, but like, and that also goes, that's why you don't sleep as good when you go to a hotel. So if you're traveling a lot, that's why you don't sleep as good, because your brain's not fully shutting off, because there's an awareness, a protective instinct that comes on where you're just like, you're not getting that sleep. But it's also fascinating with like the birds and the song and stuff. It's the same reason why they tell you, like when you're learning something new, like a new skill, like the piano or martial arts, getting good sleep while you're trying to learn that, getting a good sleep after you've had a really good study session, because now your brain is taking that information, and that's the way that your brain works when it goes to sleep, right?
It integrates. We learned this in physiology too. We learned this. Yeah.
Like, so, okay, let's talk a little bit more in depth about sleep. So in particular, we talked about like REM sleep, and then there's non-rapid eye movement sleep. So that's kind of just before you get into that dream sleep.
Yep. And then there's one even underneath REM, just like I think it's stage 4.
Yeah. There's like various stages that you go through, right?
And so it's been a while since I've really looked into this, but I think it's ideal that you want to go through stages 1 to 4 multiple times throughout the night. It might just be 3 times, but you kind of want to go up and down the staircase with those stages, because as you alluded to, the brain and body do slightly different things depending on the stage. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to miss the stage where your brain is scavenging old neurons and then like kind of getting it out of that space. So you don't want to miss those stages. And with that said, like in the morning, if you're hitting snooze every 10 minutes, you might be going down into stage 1, maybe into stage 2, and your body's thinking, oh, we're going into the stages, and then you wake it up and it goes, okay, we're in stage 0. And then you hit snooze and it goes down and it thinks, and then you wake it up and you're just wreaking havoc on yourself doing that. So try not to do that.
And like from a physical fatigue standpoint, it's really, really difficult, but also like we talked about, the brain does a lot of other things while you're sleeping. And so if you're worrying about things, if you're anxious and stuff, and you're disrupting some of those cycles, or those cycles are being disrupted, then that has a big impact as well, right? When we look at that REM sleep, like we said, like that's where your brain goes to work and says like, okay, these legitimate memories from the day or from the week or whatever, we're going to sort those through. We're going to try and draw connections now. That's why your brain gets creative, and you have crazy dreams about, it's kind of relates to that thing that you were worrying about, but your brain took it, like the creative mind also goes to work when you're dreaming, right? And so you get these other things. But then, the stage before that, like before you get into that REM sleep, your brain is also taking information that it doesn't really deem necessary and storing that away into a kind of long-term storage. Right? So it's like, okay, your brain is deciphering between like, okay, what's important and what's not important for us to problem solve here. And then it's separating it through that time. So if that's being disrupted as well, now you can also get into something where you're waking up and you're worrying about things you don't necessarily need to be worrying about, or you're not properly, like, your sleep is therapy, really, right? And so if you're disrupting that therapy, then it's going to be harder for you to get over those things that might be increasing stress levels and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Sleep, it really is an art form.
It is.
Like the sleep hygiene, it's an art form, and there is an element of sacrifice within it too, because what someone like myself is going to tell a patient is things like, don't engage in any activity too stimulating at nighttime. Don't read headlines at night that are just going to get your blood boiling. Don't even read a thrilling novel that's going to get your adrenaline moving. Don't watch a thrilling crime show. It's like, so, and that's kind of what we do, is we just keep engaging into entertainment culturally. I do this too before bedtime. But if you really want to do it right, there is the sacrificial element where it's like, when I do it, I just kind of say to myself, okay, wanting brain, what do you want? You want entertainment? We just watched, we watched a show over dinner. What are you still looking for? And then you realize that it's just this kind of part of the mind that's seeking something just for quick satisfaction. And then for myself, I just kind of go, you know what, I'm willing to make the sacrifice now, if that means that the lights kind of go out and I'm left with my thoughts or whatever, then so be it. And it seems difficult, but then you do it and you have a much better sleep. Yeah. Then you start to realize the value.
Yeah. So yeah, let's kind of talk about that a little bit, as we could go on forever about sleep and what it does for you and that type of thing. But for people who are sitting here saying like, yeah, I don't get great sleep, what are some things that we can do to improve that? Well, like sleep schedule is a big thing. Like having a consistent sleep schedule too. Like, not like, okay, well, today I went to bed at 10. Yesterday I went to bed at 11:30. The day before I went to bed at 9. Like those are still pretty close together, but like you want to have as consistent a schedule as possible. You don't want to be. It's really difficult. Like people who do like shift work and stuff. Like I find like
I feel for them.
I feel for them too, and they're like, a lot of those people are like getting sick very often. Like they're constantly getting colds and flus and those types of things, and it's because they're not getting the quality of. They might be sleeping during the day, and then next week they're sleeping in the evening, but that quality of sleep is going to suffer if you don't have a consistent rhythm, because of your circadian rhythm, that your body adjusting to light and darkness type of thing. Like that's a big part of it too. That's
how our rhythm works. Being a diurnal species, we go by the rhythm of the sun and the moon, and now that we're all in a bit more of an artificial schedule year round. So sometimes we are waking up in the dark and all that. So it's not perfect, but it's much better to have something consistent. I'm telling you, your body and nervous system is pleading with you to have a consistent sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting sunlight during the day too is a big one. Like don't sit
first thing in the morning.
Yeah, don't sit in this dark podcast room. First thing in the morning when you wake up, like go like try and get outside, open a window, like let that light in. That's gonna really help to help you reset that as well if it has been off.
Yes, it shuts off the melatonin production in your pineal gland, so as soon as your eyeballs intake a certain type of light that the morning brings, it signals the brain to shut off melatonin production. And most people know melatonin by the little thing that you can take at nighttime to help you sleep, right? So you don't want melatonin on during the day. You want to upregulate it leading up to bed. So that's why it might be recommended to wear blue light glasses. I know that the evidence is kind of controversial on that, but I still think that there's value in that, even in the ritual of it. Right, putting on the glasses and then you start, if you have dimmers, putting lights a little bit lower, just all around the house, all around your track, like from the kitchen to your bedroom, all that, and just start putting the lights down low because the sun's going down, and naturally we should be mimicking that in some way that we can in our artificial, comfy home environment. So blue light glasses, dimming the lights, starting at 10. Putting some of the dimmers on your electronic devices. These are all things that you can do, and that would be like a good first step if someone's saying, I'm not willing to let go of my phone. That's how I go to sleep at night. You're not like, I can tell them and they can nod and say, yes, I'm going to do that. And then, whether they do it or not is a different thing, but you can say, look, at least try to dim the screen, at least try the blue light glasses, see if it helps with eye strain and things like that.
It's like having a routine, right? And you kind of mentioned almost like even just like putting on those glasses might be a trigger for your brain to go, okay, we're getting ready to go to sleep, right? And there's a chemical, is it adenosine?
Adenosine, yeah.
Yeah, adenosine, right? And that's the chemical that starts to tell your brain, it builds throughout the day, it creates a pressure for sleep, right?
And it's what coffee blocks.
Yeah.
Yep.
And caffeine in general.
Sorry, caffeine blocks. Yeah.
Does alcohol also affect that as well?
I'm not sure. I just know that alcohol has more of an effect on the central nervous system.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it does. Don't quote me on that, but I believe alcohol does too, and I believe nicotine does as well. It also has an impact on that chemical, so that can impact your quality of sleep again, right? Where it's like it doesn't. I think maybe like you said, like the central nervous system, it has more of an impact on that of like not being able to get into that dream sleep as effectively, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't rely on alcoholic nightcaps to put you to sleep and to give you a quality sleep. It doesn't work.
It might relax you before bed, but you're suffering once you're asleep.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's the whole thing of like, I'm going to have a nightcap. It's like, oh, that's going to just give me that trigger, that relaxing thing that tells me, okay, it's time for bed. But the quality of sleep that you're having is going to suffer from that for sure.
I'll order you a much better tea than alcohol to help put you to sleep.
Yeah. What is it?
Well, there's certain ingredients called nervines, and in the herbal world, they're also called hypnotics. I don't want anyone to think they're going to be all hypnotized. It's just things. They have a subtle effect on calming you down, and as part of your bedtime routine, it's a really nice addition.
Okay.
Just as long as you just go pee once before bed and don't let that wake you up because you're having tea. But yeah,
I might need to grab some of that from you.
Another interesting thing it relates to temperature and sleep, and that's that I'm always thinking about how we developed and evolved as a species and in the natural world, and one of the reasons why sleep experts suggest that you take a hot shower before bed, it's not because of the increase in temperature that the shower gives you. It's the drop in temperature that's going to occur once you get out of the shower, mimics the drop in temperature in the natural world when the sun goes down, that starts to signal your body that it's time to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So
and then it also has an impact on like your core body temperature as well, like your internal body temperature, whereas like you're having a hot bath or something, it drops that core body temperature as well, correct?
Versus a shower, just the length that you're in
just any like external heat like that can like,
I see.
If you're feeling hot from that hot bath or that hot shower, your internal body temperature is going to drop to create a balance, and having that cooler temperature internally is going to help you sleep as well.
It should. If that's what happens, any change in temperature, especially so if it's going from hot to cold, it's going to help support your sleep. And that's why, like, big, long, hot showers at the beginning of the day. They might feel nice, but it's not necessarily a good thing to really get you up and revving.
Well, like there's an element too of like you're having that hot bath before bed. Maybe that's also kind of that trigger where it's like telling your body, okay, just that ritual of like, okay, we're calming down now.
Yep.
Right. That's powerful too.
Yeah. So it's like, if anyone wants to, I think there's like 15 points to hit about sleep hygiene, about all these things.
On and on.
So yeah, if anyone wants to know more, make sure you drop us a line. It's something that I work with people a lot. And so yeah, just drop us a line because it's so important for fatigue.
One final note that I'm going to make on sleeping, and this is from my personal experience because I have struggled with sleep over the years and stuff like that, and had to really try and find solutions for, okay, I'm not sleeping or I can't sleep. Like, what do I do? Well, number one, don't stay in bed and toss and turn. Because if you're staying in bed, you're tossing and turning, what you're doing now is you're actually telling your brain that this is where I don't sleep. So if you can't sleep, like you recognize you've been up for 30 minutes, you feel wide awake, you can't sleep, go do something else. Change your environment, preferably like depending on how like drained you feel, like try not to go and sit in front of the TV or on your phone, the type of thing. Like go do something else, like read a book,
stretch,
go
I don't know,
stretch whatever, go put
down.
some dishes away, I don't care, but do something different, preferably actually something that you enjoy doing, because it's going to distract you away from the fact that you're not sleeping right now. And then there's a realization that I also made where it's like most people, when they do wake up in the middle of the night and they're feeling that wide awake, it's going to take most people an average of 2 hours to fall back asleep. So like just knowing that in general takes a lot of the stress off. It's like, okay, it's going to be a little bit before I fall back asleep. Probably will eventually, but for now I'm not going to worry about it because I know it's going to take me some time, right? And then there's other tips and strategies on like trying to fall asleep and like trying to distract your brain, those types of things.
There's good things out there. Yeah.
So if this is something you have been struggling with, please reach out. Either one of us would be really happy to go into detail and help you guys strategize, or, like Dr. Riley said, like do some lab testing and find some actual solutions, because there might be some like real biological things that are impacting that as well, not just behavior.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it is like we've talked a little bit about nutritional deficiencies and things like that, medications that can cause fatigue. I want to make sure I mention just a few more things that can cause it. So digestive imbalances, if you're not breaking down and distributing and utilizing your nutrients properly, that's going to affect your energy levels. Okay, so it could be related to your digestion. We talked about autoimmunity and thyroid, but really, I mean, if your body is using so much energy to fight itself, that's going to cause fatigue. So at that point, it becomes more about managing fatigue than solving completely and curing, right? And it's really interesting what certain cognitive techniques can do with people. If you just change their perspective, you can increase their energy, you can decrease their pain, not by a ton, but by a significant enough amount for it to show up in the studies. So
are you saying like your mindset alone can affect your energy levels?
And this isn't to put blame on people, because there's significant mental health issues that cause these types of thought patterns. But if you're the type of person that you've learned to tell yourself that you're worthless constantly,
or the world is against you,
and the really heavy victim-like thinking, sometimes you can control these thoughts, sometimes they're involuntary depending on the mental health condition. So let's just talk about if you can control them. If you can control them, absolutely, that's going to zap your energy. Yes, negativity in your mind, especially like chronic, ongoing negative self-talk, and also just rumination about your own life situation and about things, you've been wronged and things that have happened, and holding grudges. Like this is heavy stuff. Every time you have a thought about that, having a thought takes energy. There's ATP that is utilized. That's our energy currency in the body. That's utilized when you have a thought. It's not for free. It's not invisible, and it's not imaginary. This costs you energy, and the negative just seems to have a particular density to it. When it comes to zapping your energy.
And people don't realize, like, I think a lot of people think like your brain is kind of works against you, like more often than not. But really, your brain you have things like anxiety and stuff that, the way that I view those types of things, anxiety, negativity and stuff like that, is it tries to latch on to different things to heighten that, whatever it is, right? That nervous reaction, whatever. It tries to latch onto things. So it'd be like, oh, this worry, right? It's like people who are dealing with anxiety and stuff like that. For myself, when I've dealt with anxiety, it's recognizing it as a big thing, right? It takes power away from it. Oh, this isn't actually me worrying. This is just my anxiety that's trying to latch on to this thing. But the reason I mention that is because people, I think, and I've been there before as well, where you're thinking like, well, the brain is just like constantly trying to stress me out. It's constantly trying to trick me. Not necessarily. Your brain tries to find balance. Your body tries to find balance in every situation possible. Your body wants equilibrium. That's what we want, right? And so if you're having negative thoughts, your body's working super hard to try and bring you back to balance. And if you're constantly struggling with that, yeah, it's going to fatigue you because your body, when you're thinking, remember metabolism? Well, it takes cells to think. Yeah, that's a cellular reaction in your body. That's also going to get your metabolism. There's a reason why when you're stressed, right, your heart rate goes up because your body, when you're stressing, your body's going to work as well, because not only is it a nervous system reaction, but also it's a chemical reaction in the brain, a cellular reaction that's happening all over your body. It's a really important thing to realize for people.
Yeah, and don't let a little, like, if you're not somebody who's been diagnosed with anxiety, don't let a little bit of anxiety exactly throw you off, because it could just be you might be anxious for a good reason. You might be underprepared for this thing coming up, and your mind's like, we got to prepare.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can actually harness it to a certain degree. That's something that that I've personally tried to ask myself, is this anxiety because there's danger and fear? Well, what kind of danger? Is it embarrassment that I won't do? Is it actual physical danger? Sometimes it is, but even so, let's say it is, there's probably an element of your brain being anxious for a decent reason. It's not just doing it for nothing. It's trying to say, we got to rev up, we got to prepare. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Yeah. And it's like, sometimes if you can harness it and see it for what it is, and then you utilize those feelings for good, and you actually prepare and you use your energy for that, and then you go through the event and it's no big deal. It's like, okay, I could have used less anxiety leading up to that. Thank you, brain. But over time, maybe you can really learn to leverage it and make it work for you.
Yeah, and that change in perspective, that change of mindset can really diminish the worry, which can then diminish the amount of energy you're actually putting into that mind frame. Yes. Which is then going to help with your fatigue, your overall fatigue.
You're right. And that's like some of what I do. And then also therapists, psychologists, it's about reframing. And so you might really help coach somebody to reframe something from anxiety to a different word, anticipation. Yeah. That simple, like in whatever resonates for that person. But if that word anticipation really resonates for that person, there you have it. You haven't solved everyone's problems, but if you can take down anxiety scores by 20%, that's a huge success. Yeah. That's huge success just by reframing one term. You start to feel it. You start to feel your heart rate increase. You start to feel your breathing, and your past self goes, this is anxiety. This is anxiety. Guess what? You're going to tense up more. Yeah. And this is, in my view, this is how, like one of the avenues that people start going down when they experience something that they would call a panic attack. It does. It's almost like a positive feedback loop. Friends of mine who are emergency room medical doctors see this a lot with people taking blood pressure at home. They'll say, and I know this firsthand. I was lucky enough to shadow them during my internship for some of my preceptor hours, and so I was shadowing some midnight emergency room shifts. I don't know if you knew that. No, I didn't. And so people, the story is essentially this. They're lying in bed, awake. They can't sleep. They're a little bit anxious. They think, I don't know what's going on, but at least I have this blood pressure monitored. I'm going to check my blood pressure. Well, their blood pressure is already elevated because they're awake. It's 1 a.m. and they're anxious and they don't know why. So then they go to the emergency room because their blood pressure is elevated, and it's like it turns into this thing. And eventually, all the advice that they are given, after they're given all the tests and everything, the advice is like, don't take your blood pressure when you're anxious. And don't come to the emerge room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's this is a different conversation now, but like just to steer off just slightly here, like that's one thing that I don't love about like this like trend in heart rate monitors with fitness. It's like you have to reach this heart rate. You have no idea what that person just went through during their work day, and now you're going into this fitness studio, hooking yourself up to a heart rate monitor, going like, oh, I got to hit this level, right? Or, oh, I'm only working hard if I'm at this level and stuff like that. Like, it's not only is it it can be a dangerous. I should be a little bit more careful there. It can be a dangerous thing, but more importantly, it can be like a real misperception for people, like when looking at that, because like you said, like there could be medication. They might have just had an argument with their spouse on the way to the gym. You know, there's so many different things that go into that we do need to be careful when looking at that. And, you know, like you said, like even with panic attacks and stuff like that, those are things that are going to like increase that heart rate and increase those feelings. But
yeah, just a quick footnote for me personally. It's really hard for me to talk in absolutes about anxiety and depression and panic attacks. I just want to let everyone know, I fully realize there's a huge spectrum between people who believe they might have them, and they might be panic attacks versus like a chronic, recurring, weekly kind of thing. So I do realize that, but I'm still trying my best because we deal with people that they don't necessarily have diagnoses, and it's not because they don't have the condition or whatever. It's just like they don't have a diagnosis, and so we work with a lot of people that there's a lot that we can do for them just on changing their mindset. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't want anyone screaming into their like speaker right now being like, yeah, just change your mindset and solve anxiety. I know. That's not what I'm talking about, right?
Well, what we're talking about when talking about like whether it's anxiety and sleep and, you know, just all things that relate to fatigue in this episode, is we're talking about how do you give yourself the best chance at diminishing some of those things, at how do you set yourself up for success in the best way. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about like better sleep hygiene and changing your mindset and trying to like do that kind of work. We're not saying that this is going to fix it or that this is even going to necessarily help any one particular person. But what it is when you do recognize, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, when you're sitting down and saying like, okay, I'm fatigued, like I'm feeling constantly tired, that type of thing. It's like you have to go into problem solving mode and you have to try things. You do. Right? We're not saying it's going to fix it.
That's all you're the psychologist and therapist and that's all anyone else is going to do too.
Absolutely. Right? And it's good to have that guidance. It's good to have somebody that checks in with you, gives you accountability for checking those things. That's what's going to get you there. But yeah, like you said, like we're not trying to like minimize anybody's situation and say, you know, if you only just did this, like you wouldn't be dealing with this. Well, no, you probably will be dealing with it. There's a reason why we're all dealing with these things. And there's a reason why they've come to the forefront of the world right now with everything that's going on. These are some things hopefully in this episode that you've listened to that can help.
Yeah. And let's keep talking about what we can do to help.
Yeah.
So we definitely covered sleep. And we didn't cover it exhaustively because it's its own thing. So again, please.
Exhaustively? Was that on purpose?
Oh. So what else can we do? Well, I was looking into, because I know what I would do, but I'm like, what are other professions doing? And almost everyone is saying the same thing. It's like, are you underactive or are you overactive? Well, there needs to be some sort of an activity in as being a human being if you're physically able to do so. And if you aren't doing enough and you think you're tired, well, there's the old paradox of if you get moving and you get doing things, it's actually going to help you. And there's something in the world of treating depression called behavioral activation. And so there's things that we can do to try. If you can't even get to that first step, there's things that you can do, and some people can't. But really, look at your physical activity level. From what I've seen, it's like 150 minutes a week is from the research is what I would recommend people do. But you start small, right? You start with an hour a week.
Start realistic.
So so exercise therapy, so to speak, is a big one for combating fatigue.
100%. And also nutrition, right? I've worked with many people who they're like, you know, I've just been really tired this week, or these last couple of weeks I've been really tired. Well, maybe that's not chronic fatigue, But I've seen people who, when you look at like, well, what have you been eating? How have you been eating? Oh, I haven't really been eating much. I've just been so busy. Like I've been skipping lunch. I've been skipping breakfast. I'm only eating once a day or stuff like that. Start to look at that too. Like remember, food is energy. Food provides energy for your body. And so if you're not eating enough, or if you're not eating, like we talked about earlier, good quality foods, good nutrient dense foods that put your body to work and help kind of rev up your engine a little bit, then that can also impact kind of short-term fatigue, and it can lead into chronic fatigue as well.
And you can also be eating foods that you're not really aware that you are maybe intolerant or insensitive to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, intolerant you would probably know, because when we think of dairy intolerance, it's like you eat dairy and there's a cause and effect thing. But insofar as food sensitivities goes, that's something that can be tested as well. And you don't have to get tested for food sensitivities. You can do it through something called an elimination diet, where you just parse down your diet to foods that are known to not be cause an allergic reaction or an inflammatory reaction or anything like that in most people. And that's what the elim diet is. And then what you do is you slowly introduce foods back, like slowly introduce back citrus, dairy, gluten, caffeine, things like that, in a very planned out and orderly fashion, so that when you reintroduce, let's say, refined sugars, you go pretty hard at it for that day. Like I had someone, I'm almost ashamed to say this, but they were wondering, well, how can I get a lot of sugar and how can we know? And I said Slurpees.
Slurpees.
So they drank Slurpees, and their symptoms went away with the elim diet for 2 or 3 weeks. They drank Slurpees, and that night and the entire next, 36 hours, excruciating arthritic pain again. And so, well, there it is. So that's the elim diet. It's hard. It's hard.
Can I just add into, like, with that type of diet, that is a good way for somebody to figure out, like, what diet is best for me, right? Like, because so many people are like, oh, I read that ketogenic diet will help me with this. I'm going to try that. Well, you don't know what your sensitivities are. You don't know any of that information yet. This would be a really good way for somebody who's like, I just don't know. Like, there's so much contradicting information about this diet and that diet and this diet and that diet. This is a good way to find out. Mm-hmm. Well, which one is best for me?
Yeah. How does my body react to certain food groups that I've always assumed are okay for me? And,
you might be following a diet or a lifestyle that is conducive to weight loss, for example, something I deal with a lot, but that might be causing you problems like you're talking about that can lead to fatigue, energy drops, energy dips, like those types of things. And so, yeah, I think nutrition and exercise are both like really big parts of that.
Yep. Yeah. So nutrition, exercise, sleep, just
stress
management and toxicity and negativity in your life and holding grudges and
mindset.
And yeah, mindset. It really is. You can just completely change things sometimes, but you almost have to learn how to change things.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of, that's, I guess, the crux of it there.
And hopefully this episode has been a good, like, step in the right direction for anybody who has been struggling with that chronic fatigue or even short-term fatigue or lack of sleep or anything like that.
Right. Well, one more thing that I want to mention for combating fatigue is in the world of supplements and herbs. So there are things out there that can support your metabolism, both physical and mental exertion. So there are supplements you can take. One that's out there that's seen decent evidence. It's most of the studies I've seen come from Europe. It's the same author, which you don't like to see multiple studies of the same author. But anyways, there's in a certain patient population, it's like 60 and older, something called acetyl L-carnitine, Alcar, can really help. I'm not going to give dosages or anything like that because I don't want to be liable for that until somebody's a patient.
I have heard more and more about that though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've used it myself and was like, yeah, it's one of those things you can take and go, oh, finally, it's like a supplement, a nutraceutical or an herbal supplement that I can really notice the difference. So.
Yeah, and let's be clear, it's not like a magic bullet or anything like that.
It's just supportive.
It's going to support like anything that we talk about in terms of supplements. Like you're not going to take it and it works. It's going to support the other things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. And then there's another classification of herbs, and they're called stimulating adaptogens. And so what adaptogens do is really help you adapt to stress, but there can be more of like the balancing, soothing adaptogens, and there can be ones that are a little bit more stimulating. And so stimulating adaptogens is what you want in the herbal world.
So you're talking herbal uppers and downers, are you?
I am. Don't tell anyone though.
Yeah.
Black market stuff. No, this is with herbal medicine, it's like you're not the effect is it's almost always gonna be a little bit more subtle than like the synthesized pharmaceuticals, but you're not dealing with the same side effect profile. It just takes longer. You're still gonna see benefits. It just takes a little bit more patience, but you're introducing things and compounds that your body's it's fairly familiar with. It just takes a little while for it to I guess to accept these things that you're putting into your system and build up a bit of a reserve for some of the active compounds. Yeah. Depending on generally speaking.
I've always been a believer that the things that take you a little bit longer, those things that take time, are usually the things that are going to be the most positive for you.
Why is it that way, Kyle? Why?
Oh, life. All right. I mean, there's a ton of information that we've given in this episode, and I'm sure we can branch off from this topic to a lot of different things like sleep and just mindset, digestion, like all those different things, supplements, like these are things that we'll branch off and talk more in depth about. But hopefully in terms of just fatigue and energy levels in general, anybody who's struggling with those things or who are noticing variations in their day-to-day life with those things, hopefully some of the strategies that we've talked about today, hopefully we were able to give you an understanding on what might be going on, but then also hopefully you're able to walk away with some strategies on, okay, where can I start? What things can I start to try?
That's right. The solutions themselves, they're there. We know what they are, but it's the doing and the integration that is always the tough part.
Yeah. So feel free. We've said it a couple times throughout this episode because there's so much information, but feel free to reach out. Like if there's one thing that stuck with you and you're like, I want to know more about that, like let us know. We can both do free consultations. We offer them on our website. Not to try and be all salesy here, but really like we do want to help you. And so take advantage of a free consultation, chat with us, and we can see, we'll tell you if we think we can help or if we don't think we can help, and go from there, right? It's a starting point. You got to start somewhere. That's right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we're looking forward to episode 7 and building up to that episode 10 now.
All right. Until next time, everyone. See ya.
See you later.